I did the dirty work for you so that your wallet can save some coin. So I'm going to break down some of the most popular cream bronzers and contours, give you the tea on the pricing, the shade range, the texture, and let you know who I would recommend the product for, because really there's not a bad cream bronzer I've tried. It just depends on what you prefer. So if you're interested in finding the best cream bronzer for you or contour this summer, then keep on watching. The very first product on the list is the Nars Sun-Kissed Bronzing Creams. I have two shades in Laguna and Laguna 03. These do retail for $38, which is kind of on the pricier side when it comes to cream bronzers. When Nars originally launched their cream bronzers, they only had it in one shade, which was the shade Laguna. However, it became so popular that they ended up releasing a whole shade range a few years later, which I'm so excited about because honestly, this is a very impressive, beautiful formula that I would recommend if you have acne-prone textured skin. Overall, I would describe this formulation as very creamy, more like a mousse to powder formula. It is very lightweight, airy, and blendable onto the skin. And the pigmentation, I would say, is pretty medium. It's so easy to work with onto the skin. It doesn't create patchiness and can be built up for the color that you want. The shade Laguna is a bit more neutral and cool tone on my skin. I like to wear this in the winter time when I'm less tan. This is the shade Laguna 3, which is a much deeper color and part of their new shade range. This leans again a lot more dark and on the neutral cool tone side. So when it comes to shade range, I think Nars probably has the most perfect shade range if you are a cool tone, neutral, or olive undertone, because even though they are meant to be bronzers, they don't lean super orange, which I really love. If there's anything that I prefer in a cream bronzer when it comes to shade, is something that is warm but also still neutral, because I do like to sculpt and bronze my face at the same time. I rarely ever go in with like just a sculpting product. I prefer something that can give me a little bit of both. It does dry down to be soft matte, so it's not going to enhance any of your texture or bumps on your skin. And bonus, it smells so good. So apparently the smell of this Nars cream bronzer is their French Polynesian Manoy de Tahiti oil. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but it's their signature scent, and I am absolutely obsessed with it. It kind of smells synthetic and sweets at the same time. It is not an offensive, off-putting smell at all. You're not even gonna smell it when it's on your face, but when you put your nose into the little container, it just smells seriously divine. Smells like summer to me. Next on the list is the infamous Charlotte Tilbury Sun-Kissed Glow Bronzer, which is actually surprising for me because originally I did not read the words glow. I actually don't think this is a glowy bronzer at all. However, I just think that was more of a marketing term than anything else. When I swatch this formula, it reminds me very much of the Chanel cream bronzer. I feel like the swirl and the inspiration comes from Chanel in my personal opinion. This also retails for a whopping $58, which in my opinion is kind of insane and probably the most expensive cream bronzer in this entire video. The formula does remind me a little bit of the Nars cream bronzer. It has that very cream to powder texture. However, instead of a very lightweight, airy, moussey texture, I find it to be more of a creamy, almost moisturizing formula than the Nars one. In general, I think that when I'm using this during the winter time, the formula is just not as good because in the summertime, my house is much warmer. So right now, this is so creamy and blendable and wet. But in the winter time, I actually find this to be difficult to use. The texture is much drier and also can be a little bit patchy on the skin if I don't use the right application method or brush. Out of all of the cream bronzers that I'm going to be talking about today, I actually think this bronzer is kind of mediocre, especially for the price of $58. If I were to rank this in a video, I would probably put this at the bottom. Not that the formula is bad and not workable, it's just that for the price, there are so many other cream bronzers that perform the same, if not better, for a lower cost. So as much as I love Charlotte Tilbury, I think this formula is just good. The only person I would really recommend this to is if you are a Charlotte Tilbury lover and collector, you love the packaging and the vibe of it. And it's probably going to be your only cream bronzer ever. If that is you, then I would recommend this. However, if you are on a budget and you want a good formula or a great formula, then I think you can totally pass on this because you're really not missing out. Next is the Huda Beauty Tantour, which is such an OG product that I feel like the hype has died down for this and been replaced with so many other products. However, I have to say this is still such a beautiful formula and product and deserves to be re-hyped because in comparison to the rest of the formulas that I'm going to share with you, I always go back to this one and I feel so satisfied. Whenever I'm just looking for a good makeup day, I can't take any risks, I use the Huda Beauty Tantour because it never lets me down and it feels like the most safe product for me to use. Specifically, I have the shade Light, which is odd because you would think I'd be a shade darker, but the thing about the Huda Beauty Tantour is that the shade range runs deeper than you expect because it is much pigmented than you expect. I also forgot to mention for the Charlotte Tilbury, the shade range runs truly warm toned, mainly as a bronzer, and for me personally, I do like something that leans a little bit more neutral warm because I like to have warmth with a bit of sculpt, and I feel like the Tantour does a better job at that, and this is the shade Light, which is absolutely insane. I would recommend the Huda Beauty Tantour if you want something that is very creamy all year round. You don't have to wait for the summertime for it to melt onto the skin. It's very easy, blendable, and so pigmented. So if you're the type to like pigmented products, you like a full glam, then definitely this will work for you. But this also works for every day because you can really use a light hand to blend this more naturally into the skin. And in comparison to the Nars, I find this has just a slight more of a sheen, and it is a more wet formula than the Nars. So if you have dry skin, then I would definitely recommend the Huda Beauty Tantour over the Nars. But if you are more of an oily skin type, then you probably like the Nars because it leans a bit more matte. Next up is the Fenty Beauty Match Stix, which retails for $32, and in my opinion is actually a bit higher than I really expected. In terms of shade range, I think the intentionality in the marketing of this leans more towards a contour stick than a bronzing product. However, Fenty Beauty does have so many shades for this match stick that you could find shades that lean a little bit more warm, and you could find shades that lean a little bit more sculpting and contour. In terms of the formula, this is one of the driest formulas out of all of the cream products that I've tried. It definitely isn't as creamy as the previous ones that I've shared with you today. It's 100% a drier, thinner, but pigmented formula, and it definitely sets on the skin quicker than the rest of these. The good thing is that because of the drier, quicker setting formula, it lasts much longer on the skin. I do have the shade Swedish, and I prefer to use the shade for contouring than anything else because it definitely leans much more cool toned. In terms of application, I absolutely love the size of this matchstick. It perfectly just goes into the hollows of my cheeks. It's so good for contouring. I can even use it on my nose, and I feel like it can give me a thin enough line, which I feel like is rare for certain stick products. However, the downside of this product is that because it's a drier formula, but it's also very pigmented, depending on what products I use this with, what brush I use this with, there is a risk of it getting patchy on the skin and clinging on to some of my drier patches or my dark spots. So I do not recommend this if you have dry skin. I would prefer for you to get the Nars one over this if you're looking for a matte formula. I just think that there's a little bit of a risk to this, and it's a bit more difficult to work with than the other formulas that I've mentioned, just because it sets down so fast and isn't as blendable as the rest. Overall, I would recommend this product if you're really just looking for a true contour shade. I think Fenty Beauty really beats the rest of the brands when it comes to shades, and especially if you want something that is very like on the go friendly, you can just draw it on, and it has the perfect size to even do a nose contour. However, if you're looking for something that is creamy, easy to blend, you have dry skin and you have dry patches, I think that this is something that you could probably pass on. So I am running out of room on my arm. I'm gonna have to go on the other arm, but let's just try to use this little space that we have here. Next up is the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Stick, which is definitely more meant to contour and sculpt your face, just like the Fenty Beauty one. However, I think that this still works as a bronzer if you want to use it as a bronzer. And the reason why I say that is because the shade range is pretty neutral. Like, it doesn't lean gray or super cool toned or even orange or warm toned. A lot of the shades are just very neutral. I have the shade in medium dark, and I find this just to be the most balanced brown shade out of all of the shades that I have swatched on my arm today. In comparison to the rest of the formulas, I think this is the closest formula to the Fenty Beauty Matchstick, except it's a bit creamier and has a more wet finish to it. The Matchstick from Fenty is a lot drier but more long lasting, and the Makeup by Mario one is a lot easier to blend, and it isn't as difficult to work with as the Fenty one. It gives you more blend time. But because the Makeup by Mario one is a bit creamier and more blendable, it's not that pigmented, and I find that I really have to build this up. When you first swatch it, you really get that dark pigmentation, but once you start to blend it, the color almost blends away. So I feel like I always have to just like keep applying this on, and sometimes setting it with a powder works best. I would really recommend this if you're looking for that perfect neutral shade and you also like the application method of a stick. It does come with its own brush. Oh, did it break off? Oh no. Oh no. Okay, well, let's deal with that later, but it comes with its own brush, and I prefer to use my own brush, but if I was traveling and I forgot a brush, I feel like that this would be perfect. If you also like a drier formula, you don't want something that is too thick on the skin, then I think this formula really works for you. It's just something that you have to build up a little bit more, because I find it to be much more sheer than the previous cream bronzers that I've mentioned in this video. Another thing you might be disappointed with if you prefer a really warm cream bronzer, this isn't going to be the shade range for you. I would probably recommend the Nars or even the Huda Beauty if you're looking for something that's truly bronzing. The Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt bronzer does retail for $30, which I feel like is pretty average in terms of a cream bronzer and contour for high-end makeup brands. Now, I couldn't have done this video without the infamous Vile Rare Beauty bronzer sticks. I have two shades of these because they did come out with new shades. The first shade I originally purchased was called Happy Soul, and the second shade I got was Good Energy, and man, am I happy that they came out with the shade Good Energy, because it is the shade that I was looking for. So originally I purchased Happy Soul just because the shade above it just was way too orange for me, and I was like, okay, I'll get a shade lighter and hopefully have something that's less orange and more of a neutral shade, but their original shade line definitely leans more bronzer. Like, some of the shades are just super warm tone, so just a warning there before you blind purchase online. Definitely recommend watching swatches on someone of your skin tone or going into the store and swatching the product first. However, they did come out with a couple of other shades that are more deeper skin and brown skin friendly, and I find that the shade Good Energy matches my skin tone so much better. One, it is more of a neutral tone, which I prefer. Like I said, I don't really like a super orange bronzer. And two, it's just much deeper. So because the shade is deeper, it gives my cheeks a little bit more of a defined look. Happy Soul did work for me, but it gives me more warmth than anything else, and it doesn't really give definition just because it's truly just a bronzer shade. This is probably the most creamiest blendable stick formula in comparison to the Fenty Beauty Match Stick and the Makeup by Mario SoftSculpt stick. This is as if I put Nars and the Huda Beauty Tantour in a stick plus more oil into it. It's a very like moisturizing wet formula that is so blendable on the skin. I would recommend this to literally anybody and everybody, whether you have oily skin, acne prone skin, textured skin, dry skin. If you are a beginner with cream contour and bronzer, I would recommend this to everybody. So if you are a beginner with makeup, if you like a no fuss product, this is definitely for you, especially if you're on a budget but you want a good product. Next up is the Viral LYS Cream Bronzer, which is an even better price than the Rare Beauty one. The Rare Beauty retails for $26 and the LYS retails for $20, which I think is actually the cheapest cream bronzer out of this entire video, which is insane. You really can't beat that for a Sephora product. Not only does LYS beat Rare Beauty in terms of price, but it also beats Rare Beauty in terms of pigmentation, color range, and creaminess. This is absolutely the creamiest, thickest, most pigmented stick bronzer I have ever tried. It is viral for a reason. I have the shade Courage. I also got the lighter shade just for days I want something a little bit more natural, but this is uber pigmented. If you have tan or deeper skin and you have a hard time finding bronzers that really align with your skin tone, LYS will probably have your shade. It 100% beats all of these brands in terms of deep and dark skin shade range. This is literally beautiful. In terms of finish, it's more of a luminous finish in comparison to the Rare Beauty. So just keep that in mind. If you have textured acne prone skin, this might enhance your texture a little bit if you have any along where you apply bronzer. For me, I actually don't notice too much of a difference, and I do end up applying powder to set my skin, so it doesn't really enhance my texture. I'd recommend the LYS bronzer, first of all, for the price, but also if you are a deeper skin tone, they definitely have an amazing shade range. And if you like something that is uber pigmented, if you're looking for a full glam cream bronzer, this brand is definitely for you. However, if you're looking for something more everyday, I would choose the Rare Beauty because this is so pigmented that sometimes I have to be very careful with how I work with it. It's almost like the equivalent of the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch liquid blushes where you only have to put a dot. This, you need like a slight swipe and just like be very careful. I would also recommend getting a shade lighter than you expect. This is the shade Courage and it's super dark for me. I love that for full glam, but I want something that is easier to work with on an everyday basis. So I got a shade even lighter than this. I think it's called Harmony. So hopefully that works better for every day. But this is a beautiful formulation, and because it's so pigmented, the shade doesn't blend away from your skin which I absolutely love. The last two on the list is for those of you who like a no makeup look, you have dry skin, you love a glowy base. This one is for you. This is the Makeup by MarioSoftSculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer in medium dark. And first off, I just want to say this is supposed to also be something that you can use as like a skin tint balm situation. It's supposed to be very versatile, but the reason why I'm mentioning it in this video is because a lot of people recommend it as a cream bronzer. This does retail for $30, which is the same price as the Makeup by MarioSoftSculpt. However, the formula is completely different. So first of all, it comes in a little pan, so you're gonna have to use a brush with this. It is also just way more emollient. Like, oh, it's literally a balm. It's a balm. If you do not like balm formulas, stay away from this. It is not for you. I thought that I could get away with this. I didn't think it was that glowy or shiny in the store, but once I got home, I was instantly disappointed because I do have oily skin. I do have texture on my cheeks, and I just have to warn you, if you are like me and you do not like enhancing the texture on your cheeks, do not get this because it is going to give you a sheeny, shiny finish, almost as if you're sweating. So I applied this on my forehead, I applied this on my cheekbones, and it looks like I'm sweating. So I don't really love it. However, I can see why a lot of people enjoy it. It's truly a nice, sheer, balmy formula. It blends seamlessly into the skin and is beautiful for no makeup days. I want to make this work for my oily skin, so I'm going to try to make this work and check in with you on it. But if you are a dry skin person or you like something very glowy, this is going to give you exactly that. A glowy, very natural finish. It's not super pigmented, so if you hate the look of the LYS and you do not want something that pigmented, this is the exact opposite of all of the other cream bronzers I've shared with you. It's truly just like a tannish tint. It's so natural for every day, but not really great for full glam. So totally up to you what you prefer. I just think that I would recommend this only if you want a no makeup look, if you like minimal makeup and you like a good glow, but if you don't like that, just stay away. And lastly on the list is something that's literally, in my opinion, the same exact formula but in a stick form. This is the Merit Bronze Balm. It's called a balm, so you know where this is gonna go. It is truly just a very balmy bronzer. That's it. It's just balmy and sheer. It's everything you would expect it to be. Again, I would say that this is the same exact formula, if not a little bit thinner than the Makeup by Mario Skin Enhancer. It has a sheen to it. It's very sheer and perfect for no makeup days. I also got the wrong shade. I have the shade in Clay. I meant to get the shade darker. The shade Clay does lean more cool tone on me, so if I were to reach for this, it's more as a contour than anything else. Just a warning if you're my skin tone and you want something that is going to show up on your skin. This is a bit, like, you can tell, like, it kind of disappears. It's just like a very sheer balm. Like, it doesn't show up that well. I would just recommend this if you like minimal makeup. The Merit Bronze Balm does retail for $30, which again is average for the rest of the cream bronzers that I've mentioned in this video. So all in all, if you have my preferences, which you don't like to enhance your skin texture, you have my skin tone, I would recommend the Nars or the Huda Beauty Tantour. And for everyone else who really just wants a good everyday stick bronzer, the Rare Beauty one is absolutely gorgeous. For those of you who like a full glam or you need a darker, deeper shade, LYS cream bronzers are where it's at, and it's such a good price of $20. So these are all of the cream bronzers that I have recently tried that are high end. I've linked below all of the products in the description if you're interested in purchasing them. I hope this video was helpful in helping you choose which cream bronzer or your contour is for you. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.